Hey, what's up, everybody? Glad to have you back. So, in today's video, I'd actually like to delve into Dauntless once again, but revolve around a question that I was asked in the comment section by one of my subscribers, Stephen Deer 7993. And the question goes as follows: what future updates do you think they will have that will change the game besides the pets? Now, I'll pretty much just be ranting in regard to what potential future updates and what cool things they could add and what things I'd personally like. But I think I'll delve more so in the idea that in regard to what I have heard, what I have seen in terms of testing, and what potential marketable and relatively smart gaming business plays they could make in regard to update placements and update ideas. So let's get ready to listen. Let's take a deep breath. Let's go out with an open mind. So, in terms of future updates, what's funny is that I am very aware in regard to the legend hunts, the pursuit like high level tier behemoths that will have different movesets and essentially are just upgraded versions of normal base behemoths like Rift Stalker, for example. I remember there was some sort of like crazy king type of Rift Stalker. It had an epic name. I don't quite recall what it was, but I think I could find it in the server highlights. Honestly, I should make a video where I just go through server highlights and stuff in the Dauntless Discord. And I'm actually very excited to see what updates will come through that will start implementing those legend hunts, because I miss my pursuits. I won't lie. Pursuits and patrols are essentially my bread and butter when it comes to my favorite parts of essentially playing this game. And with legend hunts, it may not be exactly the same as pursuits, but it's close enough, and I'm very excited to see how that goes, because I know they have a shitload of legend behemoth hunts, or like elder behemoths essentially, and I can't wait to essentially test that out, play with friends, have a good time, even make some content in regard to them playing with some special guests. I think that'd be cool. In regards to other updates, what I think that I actually could potentially play towards is, I'll be completely honest, I don't see a reason why they should stray away from implementing bow or fly fishing, or sorry, sky fishing. I am sure they have quite a bit of models that were already giving them a head start in regard to working on these specific implementations, and I know both of them were kind of forgotten to the past. But in all honesty, assuming that they're able to build upon this foundation and actually get to a point where they're not as rough and not as in a rough state compared to now, I actually think it would be incredible business ventures to do those two. Because once they do those two, it definitely would bring some players back. Definitely has the potential to be able to bring some vets back together to be able to give Dauntless a try, because that means essentially if they're able to implement those functions in a way that actually is foundationally stable and well made, then it would definitely breathe hope into the game much more, especially since these are two things that the community has been asking for essentially since the dawn of time. The further future updates, which I believe I was reading or overhearing from in regard to server highlights or just Dauntless Official itself, is I do believe they will be adding some leaderboard aspects or competitive aspects to the islands, which will give specific guilds some sort of control or some sort of benefit when it comes to ruling an island based off player participation, behemoth kills, or event completion or something like that. And it's like you go to Blazeworks or the Crudge Island and you're just able to get more benefits when you kill behemoths, maybe if you're part of the guild that is dominating that specific island. And I'm not entirely sure how they will gauge that, but I know in terms of future updates, I think that was definitely one of the announced ones that they will be implementing. I know various different other weapons will also be further implemented that further just expand upon the creativity in regard to theorycraft approach and just overall understanding of how one can go about fighting or killing behemoths. So I think that's going to be very cool. It will definitely shake up the foundation of what people have kind of come to understand in regard to overall creativity when it comes to strategy. So it's going to be very cool to be able to see all those weapons come into play, especially over the course of time. I mean, with the whole Umbral Moons being implemented and summoning pets. I can't wait to see what else they can possibly think of. It's like Borderlands. They got a shitload of different weapons that have various crazy effects, and many of which could potentially be broken, and they could just go down the route where they make a shitload of broken stuff, and that in itself will just balance itself out in some way, shape, or form. But I'm excited to see what they come up with. On top of that, I remember reading about a few potential island implementations and expanding upon the world of Dauntless, maybe making Ostia like the actual city itself. I would love to have more than just one hub where you can bounce back and forth. Maybe they could implement it where you can go to a different hub and have different quests or different access to behemoths. Like you can only get like legendary behemoth access when you go to Ostia, or for example, which I think would be pretty badass. And maybe, I don't know. For me personally, what I think is actually incredibly smart business ventures on top of implementing past promises is airship customization, or potentially just partially reverting some aspects back to OG. And what I mean is like patrols and pursuits were pretty beloved in general. I do believe those would contribute quite a bit to being able to at least have a multifaceted experience when it comes to Dauntless. Because I know Hunting Grounds has that MMORPG hunt, or like that MMORPG grind feel. It's not exactly like a Monster Hunter hunt. I think with Patrols and Pursuits, they were able to at least elicit that type of experience, and to actually have players be immersed within hunting a behemoth and trying to find it within an island rather than trying to see where it will spawn frequently in Hunting Grounds. And I think it's very important to actually have that implemented. So I actually think reverting a bit back to some patrols and pursuits, or even just adding it on top, would be a really smart idea in regard to the devs. On top of that, I actually think another very smart business venture and just game approach would actually to, yeah, I know I'm very big on the competitive side of things, right? And I'm also I'm also very entrenched within the casual and the overall player base. But I think being able to expand upon the desire to play more of the game in a way that makes sense, whether it be hashing out more competitive recognition or trying to essentially bridge the gap between competitive and casual to make it actually accessible for both, I think would be incredibly important in the long run, because there is definitely a constant rift. If there is a way, for example, or like some sort of creative method for top tier players to interact or to play directly with casual players, like various events, for example, or like where the game actually recognizes certain top tier guys and then hosts community based events that get the people going, for example, and actually interested in the idea of playing the game at a higher level than initially. I think that would be very interesting to be able to see, especially if there is a more hand in hand gesture in regard to kind of pulling people together in a way that is, community building and positive. I think that would be very important. On top of that, honestly believe Dauntless is one of the few games in the world that has not just the global prominence, but also the ability to play competitively in a global way. Like the fact that I could play with someone from Turkey, Australia, and China at the same time and be competitively viable is something you don't see in many AAA games. And me playing pro level players in other games and just going in pro level communities across various AAA games like Apex and Fortnite, it's like you don't tend to see duos, trios, or quads of people from various different parts of the world, because ping is a constant issue in regard to, for example, bullet hit registering and server response time. Here, though, it can be accommodated, and even with people with 200, 300 ping, they actually can accommodate to various different aspects in the game and still be able to place relatively high, especially at the ultimate peak of competitive Dauntless. I know some people would be like, oh, but it's kind of laggy, but keep in mind, right? When I competed, not only was Dauntless less optimized compared, well, it's arguable in regard to whether or not it was less optimized, but at the same time, we had to compete in an era where speed was not capped and behemoths had more modifiers, and the game wasn't as fleshed out. So there was different aspects in regard to various optimization when it comes to overall controller play with strikers that made it so some striker play was actually much slower response time to the server compared to nowadays. You could definitely feel it compared to back then. That's the one thing I will say that's very different. And regardless of over attack speed cap being a constant competitive strategy or approach, despite all the modifiers being blasted onto us, and despite having less optimized striker play in an era where strikers was hyper meta, we still were able to play with people from Jordan or people from Turkey, people from Hungary, people from Poland, like everybody. And I think that's really important to be able to hash out because Dauntless definitely has that unique aspect more so than any other game I have ever played. And I think it's important for the devs to recognize that because it definitely is a very important marketing tool and could provide more future updates that would in turn benefit the game greatly. And I think it's very important to be able to establish that because I know a lot of people who love playing the game casually, but I feel like just has a very negative outlook in regard to the competitive community, and it shouldn't really be like that. It should be really it should be positive, should be hand in hand, and there should be some sort of gateway in between. And on top of that, I think what's also would be really good is if they actually implemented mini games and more parkour. The movement in Dauntless in regard to scaling objects or scaling railings or just trying to climb over buildings in Ramsgate is actually really intuitive. And the parkour aspects, the hidden parkour community that once existed in Dauntless, I think still exists kind of in the underground, had so many different ways of going at the peak mountains or buildings showcase all around, whether it be in the islands or Ramsgate itself, and just be able to witness an amazing view. And even though the view may not be fully detailed, as there would be certain like for example 2D houses that were not fully built out just to mimic a 3D like a background, it's still incredibly beautiful. And I think Phoenix Labs and Dauntless should embrace that aspect. It's incredible to be able to, for example, go through some sort of parkour aspect and feel like there's more to this game than just fighting monsters. And mini games are so important as well, in my honest opinion. The whole thing with initially back then on Initial Reforged, they actually had a tag race, or sorry, a relay race or something. It was like a little. No, it wasn't a relay race. It was a race. It was a race where you just start off with 3 other guys, and then you just race through trying to collect little aether essences all across Ramsgate, and whoever got back or collected all of them fast enough and got back to the finish line won. And I thought that was an incredible implementation. I was very distraught when I found out they took it out. And there's so much that can be expanded upon this incredible system they have in regard to movement, to gameplay, and just overall just foundation base of a game. There's so much you could build upon this. And I think as long as the devs recognize that and are able to at least get more manpower to expand upon it, I think the game will actually be in a better place. I just hope they're able to recognize it. But that's pretty much it in regard to the future updates, as well as what updates I think would be incredibly smart and well thought out for their overall game development. And I think it honestly has a really good chance of being able to expand more upon it. And at the same time, right, the whole compensation thing, I think it's important for them to recognize it too. I mean, they did, being able to compensate people accordingly. But it's cool to be able to see things as coming to a new stage, a new era, a new generation. And I know I don't play as much as I used to, considering, well, it's not COVID, and I'm very entrenched and very focused on the professional world as well as content creation, more so than playing the game. But to be able to see it grow, a game that I've spent most of my life on, most of my gaming history life on, right? And a lot of my overall understanding of how to play with, for example, different cultures, different people came from this game. It's such a big part of my life. So I think it would be really cool to be able to see it thrive and be able to build upon this current foundation that it has. But yeah, that's pretty much it in regard to my answer to that question, Steven. So I hope that suffices. But anyways, guys, if you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe. It would really help me out in the long run. And yeah, thank you once again for taking the time to watch, and I honestly hope to see you guys in the next one. Take care and have a great night. Peace out, everybody.